Hi guys, welcome back to In Case of Econ Struggles. Welcome to another AP Micro Struggle. Today we're talking about market equilibrium as well as consumer, producer, and total surplus. Here are the things the College Board wants you to know about these topics. The first and most important thing that you should take away from this video is this graph right here. And then you also need to know consumer, producer, and total surplus, what it means, where it is, how to find it on this lovely graph right here. So timestamps are below if you would like to jump around, but let's get right into it. Now that we've talked about both supply and demand, this is the graph that you need to learn, you need to live, and you need to love for the AP Micro course. This is a super important graph, and it's pretty easy to understand, but let's walk through it together. So we've talked about both the demand curve and the supply curve, and now we're putting them together on the same graph. And where they cross, this is going to be what's called the equilibrium price and the equilibrium quantity. But all you need to know is that when you put supply and demand together, you find out where they cross, and that's the price that prevails in this market and the quantity that is bought and sold in this market. And generally, we use this star, so this is called P star and Q star for equilibrium price and equilibrium quantity, and D and S for the demand and the supply curve. Now we're going to start talking about consumer, producer, and total surplus, and I like to start this topic by using a really simple example. So I'm going to pretend that Barb's Bevs, it's a coffee shop, and in comes Bill. It's a Monday, so Bill is super tired, and Bill says, "Man, it's Monday, I'm super tired. I would pay $7 for a coffee right now." And Bill walks into this coffee shop where Barb has looked at her costs, and she says, "Man, I'm willing to sell a coffee for $3, but I'm going to try and sell it for $5 because then I get some profit because $5 minus $3 is a $2 profit for me." So what's going to happen? Bill's going to walk in, he's going to see the price of $5 and be like, "Awesome, I'm willing to pay $7, the price is $5, I am absolutely willing to buy this coffee." Barb is definitely willing to sell this coffee for $5 because she was willing to sell it for $3, so she's definitely willing to sell it for $5. So now if we break this down after this trade, you can see that Bill, even though he was willing to pay $7, he only had to pay $5. So Bill's like, I sort of got $2 out of this trade because I was willing to pay $7, I only had to pay $5, so I can sort of keep those $2 for myself and spend it somewhere else. So we're going to call that Bill's consumer surplus, which is his willingness to pay, the $7 he was willing to pay, minus the price he actually paid, and that's consumer surplus. Similarly, for Barb got $5 because Bill paid her $5 for the coffee, but she was willing to sell the coffee for $3. So she's like, "Great, I got those $2 of profit. I can put that back into my business or do something else with those $2. And if we add up the producer and the consumer surplus, we get total surplus, and in this case is $4. So this was just a basic example to get you to understand the concepts, but let's see how it applies to that supply and demand graph. So we've talked about this before, that the market demand and the market supply curves are just the aggregate of individual supply and demand curves. So what I've done is I've just taken the demand and the supply curve, and I've pointed out Bill, and I've pointed out Barb, and you can see that the equilibrium price and quantity, we said the equilibrium price was 5, that's why it was on Barb's beverage board, and the quantity is somewhere over here, let's say. But Bill and Barb are right here. Notice that since this demand curve represents willingness to pay, here's Bill with his willingness to pay of 7. Here's Barb with her willingness to sell of 3. The difference is the total surplus of that $4. The portion above the equilibrium price is Bill's consumer surplus. The portion below the equilibrium price is Barb's producer surplus. Now I drew this little graph here, but let's blow it up so it's a little easier to see. So using this slightly larger graph, you can see that the portion under the demand curve and above the equilibrium price, this is where your consumer surplus lies. This is the consumer surplus for not just Bill, but for everyone in this market. The portion below the equilibrium price above the supply curve, that's not just Barb's producer surplus, that's everyone in this market's producer surplus. And so if we take both these areas, the consumer surplus and the producer surplus of this giant triangle here, we would get the total surplus in this market. So hopefully this just gives you a better idea of consumer, producer, and total surplus. This was helpful. Make sure to like and subscribe, and we will see you next time for another case of Econ Struggles.